Well, this afternoon I'm going to take you to the Jazz Age. There was some music, but unfortunately I can't play it, so sorry about that. The mood you'll have to just get from the pictures. First of all, I want to thank everyone here for an absolutely amazing day. I especially want to thank Runar. I met Runar about a year ago, and prior to that, Runar had been helping me with this book, and he's been absolutely exceptional. But the archive here is absolutely wonderful, and I am so thrilled to be here, and thank you, Bjorn, as well, for everything you've done. So I'm reading this because it's quite a long speech, although it's supposed to be 20 minutes. I'm going to try and keep it to 20 minutes. My talk today is about the Norwegian Rocky twins, who were born Leif and Pal Rochberg. They made a name for themselves as dancers in the Paris Music Hall in the late 1920s, which then led to a 10-year career in Europe and America, where they appeared on the stage and in film during the 1930s. Their beauty, their carefully cultivated androgynous looks, and their outrageous antics have made them quite legendary. As you can see. In recent years, they are frequently portrayed as prime examples of sexual ambiguity from the Jazz Age in books, magazines, and online. Perhaps because of the images of them dressed as the Dolly Sisters in drag, it would appear that they have achieved some sort of cult status and have become something of gay icons. Certainly their life story is a fascinating part of queer history in the Jazz Age, and we can glimpse at the secret life of being different, or so, or oh la la in the Jazz Age. Notice those terms. Also, their journey through America in the 1930s explores some of the secrets of what's called Hollywood before censorship, before the pre-code era of about 1934, and also something called the pansy craze, which I don't know whether any of you know about, but which I find fascinating, which was an open flirtation with gay subculture. And I am going to go into a little bit more detail about both of those things later. However, before I carry on, you know who I am, but what you probably don't know is that for most of my working life, I've been working in book publishing. So now, because I've retired and I've reached older than 60, I can do what the hell I like. One of which is to publish books under my own imprint, which is called Edit Publishing. I have had a fascination for the Jazz Age for decades, and my personal collection of ephemera contains thousands of images now under license to the Mary Evans Picture Library in London. These include all my images of the Rocky twins, which I've acquired over about 20 or 30 years. Although I've been very graciously given permission to use some other photographs in my biography about them from other collections worldwide. I also have a website called the Jazz Age Club that features all things Jazz Age, and you can see a little advert for it here. If any of you want to contact me in the future for whatever reason, you can find me quite easily online, either through the Jazz Age Club or my publishing website called Edit Publishing, and I've got loads of Facebook accounts as well. But Runar knows where I am, so does Bjorn. I first became aware of the Rocky twins when I was doing the research and writing my biography about the famous Dolly Sisters, which was about 25 years ago. When the Dolly Sisters retired in late 1927, the Rocky twins attempted to take their place in more ways than one. As you can see, the Rocky twins posed in a comparable position to one that the Dolly Sisters had adopted in 1925 and seen here on the right. Naturally, like my attraction to the Dolly Sisters, I became entranced with the magic of the Rocky twins, and I began to unearth their story. It's been a long journey. What I actually discovered was that there were two parallel stories running side by side. One, the official story of their rise to fame and fortune, and their brief career on the stage, in cabaret and in film, which covered no more than 10 years, and the unofficial story, which was about their secret life navigating the somewhat obscure gay world of London, Paris, New York, and Hollywood. The Rocky twins were born in 1911 and grew up with silver spoons in their mouths. I did ask Runar last night if you'd understand what that word means, and he said yes. They did come from a somewhat privileged background in Frogner, which again, Runar tells me you'll understand is quite a posh neighbourhood in Oslo. They were obsessed with dancing, and after an abortive attempt to gain contracts in London, they finally made their debut at the Casino de Paris in late 1927. They knew about the fame and fortune of the famous twin Dolly Sisters and wanted the same kind of recognition, opportunity and adoration. Their parody of the Dolly Sisters, which is seen here in their debut at the Casino de Paris, has become their enduring legacy and what has defined them at the time and in recent years. Their first appearance in drag, which you've just seen several shots of them before, was a novelty and quite an audacious thing for two male twins of only 18 to attempt. When they took off their black bobbed wigs at the end of the number to reveal themselves, the audience may have gasped, perhaps echoing the delight that Paris had found with the American drag artist Bert, who had stunned Paris with his stylish trapeze act a few years earlier. Bert is seen here in 3 shots on the left. Female impersonation on the Parisian music hall in the late 1920s had been relatively limited, as it was on the London stage. One major drag performer in the UK was Bert Errol, who is seen here on the right. And I am going to be doing a post about Bert Errol in the oncoming months, which will be on my Jazz Age Club website. Errol's polished act was very specific due to his unique singing voice. In America, there were other comparable drag artists, particularly Julian Eltinge and Bert Savoy. They were all very careful not to fall into the trap of being labelled as homosexual, and deflected any suspicion by not being camp or outrageous. They were stylish and sophisticated, and always made it clear that they were men masquerading as women. For a Parisian audience, the Rocky twins dressed in drag was nothing short of sensational, and helped define their androgynous image, which they continued to cultivate throughout their career. The Rocky twins had talent, but they were also spoilt, mischievous, and rather full of themselves. They also had a gift that enabled them to get precisely what they wanted. They took advantage of their allure as twins by developing a childish innocence of being charming, cute, and sweet when it suited them. This air of being helpless boys in need of care appealed to those with a maternal or paternal instinct. Their first benefactors were the American millionaire Charlotte Palmer and a Parisian socialite called Monsieur von Neumann, who's fairly mysterious. And then the Parisian music hall star Mistinguett, who is extremely famous worldwide. The allure of older, well-connected and wealthy men was also a magnet to the twins, exemplified by their relationship with the Chilean millionaire Arturo Lupez and later in Hollywood with the lyricist Larry Hart of Rodgers and Hart's fame. From their debut at the Casino de Paris, they moved to the Concert Mail and then toured Europe, visiting London, Vienna, Budapest, Berlin, Oslo, Stockholm, and Copenhagen. They were described as being ravishing, elegant, and ingenious, and began dancing with other female partners. For example, at the Concert Mail, they danced with the sisters Ribartin, seen here on the left. They were also cast together in the cabaret sequence of Marcel Herbier's cinematic masterpiece called L'Argent in 1929. Later in America, this arrangement as a trio with a third female dancer became more pronounced, with a string of different partners. They also developed a range of other themed dances, not just dressing up in drag as the Dolly Sisters, one of which was their famed drunk sailor routine, which is seen here on the right-hand side. And this, you can quite clearly see, has been signed and dated, which is very helpful to me, because it places them in London on the 23rd of April 1929. After performing for 6 months in Vienna, they joined the legendary Josephine Baker in Budapest in 1929. It was here that an untold battle began that has never been written about before. It is indeed a totally unknown story by biographers of both Josephine Baker and Mistinguett. The queen of the Paris music hall, Mistinguett, loathed Josephine Baker, a feeling that was reciprocated. And I'm not going to tell you all the things that they said about each other because it's very vulgar. Mistinguett was aghast when she heard of her success, Josephine's success, with the Rocky twins. So as you do, she caught the Orient Express and immediately set out to thwart Josephine and steal the twins away. On the right-hand side is a photograph of Mistinguett arriving at the Budapest railway station, with the Rocky twins and Josephine alongside. So you can see the Rocky twins both here and Josephine at the end. This is an extraordinary picture that has never appeared anywhere before, only in my book. On the left-hand side is a really amazing photograph of Mistinguett and the Rocky twins in Budapest. And Mistinguett does have 2 legs. I don't know what she's done with one of them, but then it seems to be missing. Mistinguett succeeded in her little battle and whisked the twins back to Paris. Mistinguett said it was impossible to tell the twins apart. They were alike as 2 peas in a pod and strikingly attractive. She gave them prominent parts in her new show, and they became part of her inner social circle. What a lovely, cute picture that is. They danced together in the big spectacular show called Paris Miss at the Casino de Paris from late 1929 through 1930, and the twins were seen to great advantage in 7 different numbers. Here they are wearing Hindu costumes in fleur de lotus on the left, and as decorous dandies wearing top hats and tails with Mistinguett in Les Champs-Élysées on the right. They were once described as just a pair of hoofers, but they do look gorgeous. I like that quote. They were just dancers, but they also achieved fame because of their incredible good looks and the fact that they were reputed to be the best dressed men in the world. The Draz age represented great style, and if you were stylish and beautiful, you epitomised the era, and the Rocky twins did simply that. They were typical jazz-age beauties and bright young things. People were crazy about them, and they were regarded as 2 of the most handsome young men you'll ever see. They were also mobbed each night at the stage door by connoisseurs of the body beautiful of either sex. This is my favourite quote. Mistinguett disapproved of them being mobbed by people at the stage door and said, "Well, I suppose it was to be expected because they are Norwegian." I thought you'd like that. The gossipy entertainer Billy Milton, who knew them, said, "As one hostess remarked, you could never be sure which one you were talking to or who you had gone to bed with." Regarding their sexuality, many later observers have wanted them to be gay. In Paris and later in America, they indeed mixed in circles that could be defined as gay. Their androgynous look on the stage was seen as a key to the identity of their true natures, and the fact that they dressed up in drag as the Dolly Sisters another. On the left is a costume design by the famed artist Gesmar that stressed their androgyny. Perhaps they were pioneers of sexual ambiguity, a concept so prevalent today with words such as pansexual and gender fluid, and we've been talking about these things today, which I think is really interesting. For me, they were most likely experimental and swayed by the attractiveness of both men and women. Indeed, it was documented, or has been documented, that Leaf had 3 failed marriages. However, there are other alternatives. At a party on the Riviera in the spring of 1930 for the American millionaire Frank J. Gould, they met the Norwegian artist Ferdinand Fien. Is that right? Okay, you say it. I did ask Werner about this last night because my pronunciation is rubbish. This particular artist was about the same age as the Rocky Twins. The author, Thor Elton, who I had a long chat with, explained that Fien was clear in implying that the twins primarily financed their lives through relationships with older, rich men. They were the talk of the town, and it was très chic to be able to present them as entertainment in private contexts. I'm going to say this word now. Fien. Is it Finn or Finn? Finna. Finna found the twins not particularly intelligent, thought they were easily exploited, and had little empathy for them. It's interesting, isn't it? So, we're in Norway. Guess where this is? This is a unique view of the interior of Oslo's main cabaret venue, and I'm not going to pronounce what it says in Norwegian. I know it's called the Red Mill in English, and that's suffice for me. And this is where the Rocky Twins performed with a dance partner called Mona Lee in 1931. What a fabulous place. I don't know whether it's still there. I think it is.
No.
Have you been? You've got to find out for me.
It's disappeared.
It's disappeared? Disgraceful. That's disgraceful. The Rocky Twins were obsessed with getting to America and made 2 trips. The first to New York in 1929 to 1930, and the second to Hollywood in late 1931 through to 1933, and then back to New York again until 1936. Given their androgynous looks and the predilection for female impersonation, their arrival in both places was nothing short of auspicious, since the so-called pansy craze first flowered in New York while they were there, and then, after being shut down, re-emerged in Hollywood in the early 1930s. During the early 1930s, they flirted with Hollywood and a contract at MGM, where they were engaged as performers for foreign talkies, but also as a part of a determined policy to acquire well-known dancing acts. They did appear alongside Marion Davies in Edmund Golding's Blondie of the Follies, 1932, and here they are from 2 scenes in this film. Now you can actually see this film, and it is their performance is quite wonderful. However, the twins were arrogant and full of their own self-importance and believed that they would become the company's new stars. However, nothing was further from the truth, and in fact things did not go exactly as they planned, and they never really made the grade. However, despite the lack of enduring success, they did enjoy all the attractions and benefits of Hollywood. Having brought money with them and being on MGM's payroll, their wealth became quite an asset. They were allegedly millionaires at that time. At some point, a movie star whom they had met offered to sell them a 22-roomed Beverly Hills mansion with amazing views, and they also acquired a Rolls-Royce from another star. Here they are without clever makeup and lighting, in their car, leaving their mansion, in my opinion, looking rather fresh and handsome. The twins became part of an extraordinary flirtation with a camp, gay subculture by the smart Hollywood set, alongside the flamboyant entertainer and female impersonator Jean Marlin. He is seen here on the right in one of his film roles. Young and smart, Marlin was a striking figure at 1.8 metres tall and 91 kilos, and knew how to handle himself and hecklers. Sadly, he died very young in an accident in the early 1930s, and I really wish somebody would write a book about him. Besides circulating with the elite of Hollywood and staying at William Randolph Hearst San Simeon Retreat with his mistress, Marion Davis, the twins also embraced the secret gay social circles of Tinseltown. They were part of the smart bohemian gay set that included Tallulah Bankhead, the impresario Leonard Sillman, the lyricist Larry Hart, and Hart's sidekick Dr. Milton Bender, who became their manager. During 1932, the new Pransy craze, described as the whoops or oh la la phenomenon, erupted with full vigour in several Hollywood locations with several pansy floor shows. The underlying permissiveness and sexual freedom that pervaded the Hollywood elite found full expression in these nightclubs and cafes, with Francis Reno at Stark's Bohemian Cafe, and he is seen here on the left, and Carol Norman at La Boheme. Norman is seen here on the right. Like the first flowering of the pansy craze in New York, the female impersonators usually acknowledged a gay context, and the performance could be bawdy and lewd, so this is in complete contrast to what had happened before. By far the biggest splash was made at the newly named Club New Yorker, situated in the basement of the building adjacent to the Christie Hotel, with Jean Marlin as Master of Ceremonies and the Rocky Twins and Julian Johnson leading the floor show. Sophisticated and attractive, the place lived up to its name, providing class, entertainment and atmosphere with New York prices and entertainment. It was a dazzling new cafe in futuristic black and silver and had a cosy capacity of 250, becoming a new gathering place for the cream of Hollywood. Both the Rocky Twins and Jean Marlin were a huge success. Marlin took up half the floor show with his female impersonations and his sharp, cutting witticisms. The rest of the show was the Rocky Twins, and they did all sorts of things. In 1933, the twins moved back to New York and for several years became prime favourites in Manhattan nightclubs. In one club cabaret called the Montmartre, they gave a reprise of their clever Dollies and the Collies sketch. This is not the Rocky Twins, this is the Dolly Sisters. The Rocky Twins dressed up in drag as the Dolly Sisters doing this particular number. It had been seen very successfully in Leonard Sillman's show Lo and Behold in Hollywood. It had been a famous number that the Dolly Sisters had created where they had danced with several collie dogs. One night, Rosie Dolly was in the audience and yelled, "Those are my dogs." Rosie loved the dogs, but sadly we're not told how she felt about the Rocky Twins' impersonation of herself and her sister Jenny. Eventually the twins returned to Europe and separated as an act in 1937. Leaf was struck with a debilitating illness and turned to painting, but he never danced again. Pal took up a film career in Berlin and Paris and became associated with the German film magnate Hans Henkel, who was 14 years his senior. Here are 3 images of Pal taken during his time in Berlin, with the middle photo showing him dancing with the popular and beautiful Alajana in the all-star Topis production entitled Stars Shine that was released in March 1938. Intent on revitalising his career in film, Pal was living with Henkel in Hollywood in 1940 and was described in the census as being his partner. Very significant find that was. Henkel's financial and moral backing must have been a huge benefit to Pal, but no new film contracts emerged. World War II intervened and the Rocky Twins disappeared from the world of entertainment. They were out of history, but Leif and Pal would live on and would use all their resources and money and live on their memories. Pal was allegedly murdered in New York in 1955 and Leif died in Oslo in 1967. In an interview for the magazine Ali Kivner in 1963, Leif was asked, "You have been at the peak of success. You had the world at your feet. Are you not bitter at your fate?" He shrugged his shoulders and said, "I have a talent which is greater than everything put together. Adaptability. Goodbye."